group of racist bikers picked the wrong day to mess with Mike Tyson because they didn't realize they were about to face one of the most dangerous men to ever walk the earth. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe and let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from. The sun was sinking low over the endless stretch of American highway, throwing long shadows across the pavement as Mike Tyson cruised down the road in his black SUV. The only sound was the steady hum of his tires against the asphalt. No music, no calls, just silence. This wasn't a trip with a destination. It was a getaway, a rare chance to clear his mind and breathe away from the spotlight that had followed him for decades. Mike gripped the wheel, eyes locked on the horizon. Every passing mile gave him a little more peace. Memories bubbled up, growing up in Brownsville, fighting for every inch in a world that never handed him anything, and then that rocket ride to fame, the lights, the belts, the roaring crowds. But behind all that glory were hard falls, betrayal, scandals, nights when everything almost slipped through his fingers. Now, older and more grounded, Mike wasn't chasing anything. He was just enjoying the quiet, letting the road carry him like a long exhale. As the scenery shifted from open fields to thick woods, the sky turned a burning orange. That's when he saw it, a rundown gas station, alone in the middle of nowhere, its flickering neon sign barely hanging on. His gas tank was nearly empty. Water bottle? Bone dry. So he pulled in, gravel crunching under the tires. The station was small and weathered, peeling paint, rusty pumps, and a little shop off to the side with dusty ads in the windows. The air smelled like gas and old fryer oil, weirdly comforting in a way. Mike stepped out. Even dressed low-key in a hoodie, his presence was undeniable. The way he moved, the quiet control, it was all still there. He kept his head down. This wasn't about being recognized. This was about filling up and getting back to the peace. As he started pumping gas, he noticed them, a row of tricked-out motorcycles gleaming near the building, and a group of loud, leather-clad men hanging nearby. There were 5 or 6 of them, drinking, laughing, acting like they owned the place. One of them, a big guy with a beard and a beer bottle, stood out. Clearly the leader. Mike could feel it immediately, that shift in energy, the way they were watching him. Not curious, but calculating. Like a pack of wolves eyeing a lone traveler. He didn't react. He just kept fueling up, calm and steady. But their voices got louder. Mocking tones. Ugly laughter. Mike had heard it all before, men who felt powerful in a group, looking to unload their anger on someone they thought was vulnerable. The gas pump clicked. Full tank. He replaced the nozzle and turned slowly, making brief eye contact with the leader. Just for a second. The guy smirked, that smug look people get when they think they've already won. Mike said nothing. Just walked toward the shop, boots crunching the gravel, still calm, still quiet. He wasn't looking for a fight. He just wanted some water. But those bikers didn't know who they were dealing with. Stay tuned for what happened next, because this is where things get serious. Inside the shop, the air was cool, with that familiar scent of cleaning supplies lingering in the quiet. An older man stood behind the counter flipping through a newspaper, barely glancing up. Mike grabbed a cold bottle of water from the fridge, gave a polite nod, paid, and was back outside within minutes. But something had shifted. The lot was no longer filled with the casual noise of laughter and conversation. Now, it was dead silent. The group of bikers was still there, but they weren't joking around anymore. Every single one of them had turned their attention to Mike. One of them, a wiry guy with slick back hair, casually kicked a spray of gravel toward Mike's SUV, the little stones clinking against the paint. Another leaned right over the hood, dragging his fingers across the windshield like he owned it. Mike's pace slowed. He took a steady breath, reading the situation. He didn't want a problem, but the tension in the air was heavy, thick enough to touch. Then, the leader stepped forward. Same cocky grin, same calculated swagger, every movement was designed to flex, to dominate. Mike stopped a few feet away, gripping his bottle of water a little tighter. The setting sun cast long shadows across the gravel, stretching between them like lines in the sand. Whatever piece Mike had found on this trip was now hanging by a thread. As he got closer to his SUV, the atmosphere snapped like a live wire. The bikers had fully shifted. No more fake laughs or side glances. Now they stared at him, openly, like predators sizing up their prey. The leader, tall, scruffy, skull patches on his jacket, pushed off his bike and slowly made his way toward Mike, his boots crunching the gravel with every deliberate step. The others followed behind, forming a half-circle that blocked Mike from his car, a silent, aggressive formation. A message. Mike stopped. His body stayed loose, but his mind was razor-sharp. He'd seen this play out 100 times before. And if they thought they could corner him, they had no idea who they were dealing with. The leader smirked wider, scanning Mike from head to toe, exaggerating every gesture for the crowd behind him. They chuckled, murmuring egging comments under their breath, trying to provoke. A younger one, skinny with tattoos crawling up his neck, tossed a crushed beer can at Mike's feet. It hit the ground with a hollow clink and rolled to his boot. He laughed loud, sharp, performative, and the rest of the crew burst into forced laughter. Mike didn't even flinch. He simply stepped over the can and kept walking, calm, unshaken, deliberate. That silent confidence? It made them angrier. The leader's smirk wavered for a second, clearly annoyed that Mike wasn't taking the bait. He raised his arms with a sarcastic shrug, his body language dripping with mockery. What? Too good for us? The message clear even without words. As Mike reached his vehicle, he saw one of the men leaning on the driver's side door, arms crossed, blocking the way. Another, tall, greasy hair, stepped up and spat right on the hood. The spit shimmered under the fading light. A bold, filthy insult. The others roared with laughter. Loud. Cruel. They began to spread out around Mike and the SUV, circling him like it was all choreographed. A messy performance meant to intimidate, to trap. Mike stayed steady. He set his water bottle gently on the roof of the car and straightened up. Shoulders relaxed. Eyes calm. But his presence? Unmistakable. This wasn't new. He'd grown up around men like this. He'd fought them. Been them. He knew exactly how their minds worked, their posturing, their weaknesses. The leader, puffed up by the group's energy, stepped into Mike's space, close enough to breathe on him. He looked up, clearly smaller, but trying to make that vanish with bravado. He jabbed a finger toward Mike's chest, muttering something for his crew to laugh at again. But Mike just stood there. Silent. Still. And that silence was louder than anything they'd said so far. There was something in Mike's stillness, a quiet defiance, an unspoken warning, that shifted the air around them. It was a test of will, not strength. And the leader of the bikers knew it. His smirk slowly curled into a sneer. Then he stepped back with a sharp, theatrical motion. "Let's see how tough he really is," muttered the wiry biker, malice dripping from every word. He stepped forward, fingers brushing the metal chain that hung from his belt. Mike clocked the movement instantly but didn't flinch. Instead, he shifted his weight just slightly, relaxed, but perfectly balanced. His posture was effortless, yet it spoke volumes. He wasn't scared. And he wasn't going anywhere. That threw them off. They expected panic. Or anger. But what they got was calm. Control. That only made them angrier. The wiry one took another step, the chain now dangling from his grip, swaying as he slowly swung it at his side. The clink of the metal against itself was sharp, a sound meant to intimidate. Mike didn't even blink. His eyes remained steady. His face? As unreadable as stone. The leader, sensing the hesitation in his own crew, raised his hand and pointed at the SUV. "Looks like someone needs a little lesson in respect," he called out, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. The others roared in approval. The circle tightened. Mike took a long breath. He scanned their faces, reading their movements, their spacing, their intent. He wasn't here for this. But it was clear, they weren't backing off. His mind clicked into a familiar place. Cold. Focused. Strategic. Years of training, not just to fight, but to survive, kicked in like second nature. One of the bikers stomped toward the rear of the SUV and kicked the taillight. The glass shattered, the sound slicing through the tension. Another one followed, slamming a fist into the side mirror, snapping it loose. They laughed like hyenas, getting bolder with every second. Mike's jaw tightened, but his body stayed still. He knew this wasn't about the SUV. It wasn't even about him. It was about power. They wanted a reaction. They wanted to feel like they could break a legend. But Mike Tyson doesn't break. He stood in front of monsters, real ones, and walked out with his hands raised. And these men? They were just noise. The leader, now high on the adrenaline of his crew, stepped forward again. His smirk was full of himself, drunk on control. He reached out and clamped a hand on Mike's shoulder, gripping it hard. His eyes said it all, "Let's see what you got." Mike didn't raise a fist. He didn't yell. He just turned his head and looked right into the leader's eyes. Calm. Focused. Unblinking. And in that single moment, that stare, everything shifted. The laughter behind the leader faltered. The jeers trailed off. Even the guy with the chain stopped swinging. There was no threat in Mike's voice, because he hadn't said a word. He didn't have to. His history spoke for him. His presence said more than 1,000 punches ever could. And for the first time, the bikers hesitated. They didn't even realize it yet, but the balance of power had just shifted. The sun was almost gone now, the last rays dipping behind the trees. The air turned cooler. The silence thicker. The stage was set. The lines drawn. The next few seconds would decide everything. The leader's hand was still on Mike's shoulder, but now it felt less like dominance and more like a mistake. Behind them, the younger bikers were getting restless. One kicked gravel near Mike's boots again. Another, the one with the chain, dragged it slowly across the ground, metal links rasping like a warning bell. And then, from behind the SUV, another blow. A heavy boot against the bumper. Crack. Another cheer from the crew. Mike didn't move. His stillness was louder than all the noise. His eyes, still scanning, mapped the scene. Every stance. Every movement. Years of discipline had sharpened his instincts to a razor's edge. He wasn't scared. But he also wasn't stupid. And he knew this wasn't up to him anymore. The leader, feeling the tension rising, took a dramatic step back from Mike, laughing as if he were putting on a show. He turned to his crew and spread his arms wide like a ringmaster. "This is it," he seemed to say. "Let's give the crowd what they came for." There was a hunger in their eyes, not just for trouble, but for some twisted sense of pride. They weren't just trying to provoke Mike Tyson, they were trying to prove something to themselves. The tall one with greasy hair leaned against the SUV again and spat on the windshield, the saliva sliding across the glass like a final act of disrespect. Then came the tapping, the end of a metal pipe striking the window, each clink echoing louder than the last. Another biker joined in, dragging his fingers across the scratched paint, grinning like a kid defacing something he could never afford. Mike's patience was running thin. He wasn't a man of rage anymore, not like he used to be. Time had taught him restraint, taught him control. But there's a line. And these men were inching toward it with every smirk, every laugh, every insult. The leader watched Mike closely. He could feel it, the shift. Something in Mike had changed. He stepped forward again, this time with a swagger so exaggerated it bordered on parody. His voice rang out, loud and dripping in mockery, trying to break through that wall of calm Mike had built around himself. The words were crude, deliberate, meant to strip away control, to force a reaction. But Mike didn't rise to it. He turned slightly, just enough to lock eyes with the leader. No anger. No fear. Just pure, unshakable confidence. And for the first time, the leader flinched. Just for a moment. His grin faltered, and his cocky facade cracked. The wiry biker with the chain stepped forward, trying to recover the momentum. He let the metal arc through the air before letting it clatter against the ground, loud, deliberate, threatening. Mike's eyes glanced at the chain, then back at the man. That's it? And just like that, the tension snapped. The leader, sensing his grip slipping, barked an order. The wiry man lunged. The chain sliced through the air, but before it could even get close, Mike's hand moved like lightning. He snatched the chain mid-swing and, with a twist of his wrist, ripped it clean from the biker's hands. The metal links unraveled and hit the ground with a clatter. The man stumbled backward, stunned, his face twisted in shock. Mike dropped the chain at his feet like it meant nothing. The lot went silent. Every biker froze. The ease, the absolute control, shattered their confidence. But embarrassment burns hot. And the wiry man, red-faced and humiliated, charged again, this time with bare fists. He swung wildly. Sloppy. Angry. Mike didn't even break a sweat. One step to the side. One calculated shot to the solar plexus. The biker folded, gasping for air, falling to his knees. The others didn't laugh now. They stared. Frozen. But the leader wasn't ready to let it end. He shouted again, a desperate command, and the rest of them surged forward in a last attempt to overwhelm Mike with numbers. Mike stepped into them. He didn't wait. His fists became machines, precise, brutal, efficient. The first biker crumpled under a blow to the nose, blood pouring down his face. The second caught a shot to the ribs so hard he doubled over and collapsed. The others slowed, their steps faltering as they realized who they were fighting. This wasn't some random traveler. This was Mike Tyson. But the leader still believed in brute force. He charged, fists flailing, driven by rage instead of skill. Mike dodged effortlessly. Then countered. One uppercut, clean and sharp. The leader hit the ground, stunned and breathless. And just like that, it was over. The bikers lay scattered across the lot, groaning, bruised, broken. Mike stood in the middle of it all. Calm. Steady. His breathing controlled. His fists still clenched. He had given them every chance to walk away. They chose violence. And they got it. He looked around, eyes scanning the aftermath. Then his gaze landed on the leader, still on the ground, struggling to rise. Their eyes met. And for the first time, no smirk. Just fear. Or maybe respect. Mike turned without a word. Walked to his SUV. Picked up the water bottle from the roof. And finally twisted off the cap. Mike took a long drink from the bottle, eyes scanning the wreckage around him. The silence was thick, broken only by the groans of the men sprawled across the gas station lot. The storm had passed, but its aftermath hung in the air like smoke. What was once a chorus of laughter and bravado was now replaced by gasps and the buzz of flickering fluorescent lights overhead. Griff, the gang's leader, knelt in the gravel, one hand clutching his gut where Mike's punch had landed. His breath came in ragged bursts, loud in the silence, a painful echo of his earlier arrogance. Mike stood at the center of it all, the same way he once stood in the middle of the ring, steady, composed, and deadly. His shoulders rose and fell in rhythm. His fists, once weapons of destruction, now hung calmly at his sides. He showed no pride. No satisfaction. No rage. This hadn't been about ego. It was about finishing something that someone else started. But it still wasn't over. Griff's pride hurt more than his bruised body. For years, he and his crew ruled this stretch of highway with intimidation and fear. To be dismantled effortlessly by one man? That was something he couldn't accept. Anger bubbled beneath his ribs, fed by shame. And with a low growl, he pushed himself up. One hand slipped into his jacket pocket, slow, deliberate. Mike's eyes flicked down. He didn't need to see what it was. His instincts had already told him. A weapon. Griff pulled out a switchblade. The sharp click of the blade snapping open echoed across the lot like a warning bell. The rest of the gang stirred again. A tall biker with a busted nose grabbed a baseball bat from his bike. Another, his face swollen and purple, picked up the heavy chain Mike had dropped earlier. The tension reignited in an instant. Electric. Dangerous. Griff stepped forward, knife in hand, his grin twisted and mean. The pain no longer mattered. All he wanted was revenge. His face said everything. You think you're tough? Let's see what you do now. Mike didn't move. He didn't need to. His eyes stayed locked on Griff, calm and patient. His body, though relaxed, was ready to strike like a coiled spring. Then Griff lunged. It was a wild move. All rage, no technique. The blade cut through the air, aiming for Mike's side. But Mike was already gone. He sidestepped in a blur, caught Griff's wrist mid-swing, and twisted. Clean, controlled. The knife dropped to the gravel with a metallic clang. Griff staggered back, stunned. Mike let him go. But the others weren't done. The lanky man with the bat charged, swinging in a wide arc for Mike's head. Mike ducked, the bat slicing through empty air, then stepped in close. A sharp jab to the ribs. The man folded instantly. Air gone. Weapon dropped. Next came the man with the chain. He swung it low, trying to take out Mike's legs. Mike leapt back just in time, the chain whipping past. Then, before the attacker could recover, Mike lunged in, grabbed the chain mid-swing, and yanked it clean from his hands. One hard hook to the jaw. Another one down. Griff, seeing his men fall like dominoes, scanned the lot. And then he saw it, the knife, lying just feet away. He dove for it. Fingers wrapped around the handle. He turned, blade in hand, eyes full of fury and desperation. But this time, he was careful. No wild charges. He moved slow, blade held out like a shield. The remaining bikers tried to circle behind Mike, closing in, thinking they could trap him. It was the same old strategy, numbers over skill. But Mike had fought entire arenas. He didn't back down. Griff feinted left. And behind Mike, one of the bikers lunged with a tire iron, aiming for his back. Mike spun. Blocked the hit with his forearm. The shock rippled through muscle and bone, but he didn't flinch. He fired back with a brutal right hook. The biker flew backward, crashing into a parked motorcycle. Griff saw the opening and charged again, knife raised, teeth clenched. Mike anticipated the move. Griff lunged again, reckless and desperate, but Mike sidestepped like water slipping through fingers. In one smooth motion, he grabbed Griff's wrist and twisted it upward. The switchblade clattered to the ground once more. And this time, Mike didn't hesitate. A quick, clean strike to the jaw sent Griff sprawling. His legs gave out, and he collapsed onto the gravel, broken more by humiliation than pain. The last biker, a skinny man clutching a broken bottle, froze. His hand trembled. He looked from Mike to Griff and back again. Then, slowly, he dropped the bottle. Hands up. Eyes wide. The fight was over. Mike stood alone in the middle of the lot, chest rising and falling with steady breath, surrounded by the remains of chaos. Weapons lay scattered like discarded threats. Bikers lay groaning, broken not just in body, but in spirit. Griff, bloodied and beaten, slumped against his motorcycle, head bowed in silence. Mike surveyed the scene. He hadn't come looking for a fight. But when the fight came to him, he ended it. He picked up the water bottle, twisted off the cap, and took a long drink. Cool relief slid down his throat, but the adrenaline still burned beneath his calm exterior. Then he turned, walked slowly to the SUV, climbed in. The engine rumbled to life, the only sound in the stillness of the night. And just like that, he was gone. The roar of Mike Tyson's SUV faded into the darkness, leaving the gas station lot in eerie silence. The bikers remained, scattered like fallen chess pieces. Griff leaned against his bike, wheezing, wiping blood from his mouth. His gang, once loud and proud, now limped silently. Their weapons, a chain, a bat, a bottle, useless against a man like Mike. The gas station clerk, who had wisely stayed hidden during the chaos, finally stepped outside. His eyes widened. He lit a cigarette with trembling hands and muttered to himself, "You boys picked the wrong guy." Back inside, he grabbed the phone. The police needed to hear about this. Minutes later, the distant wail of sirens sliced through the night. Griff heard it too. His head snapped up. Blue and red lights flickered on the horizon. "Move," he barked at his men. But his voice had lost its bite. One biker struggled with a damaged bike, hands shaking too much to start it. Griff watched him for a beat, then turned and limped into the shadows, leaving his gang behind. The sirens grew louder. One by one, the rest scattered, abandoning their rides and fleeing into the night like rats from a sinking ship. Moments later, a police cruiser pulled into the station. A uniformed officer stepped out, one hand on his holstered weapon. He scanned the scene, busted bikes, blood on the ground, shattered glass. The clerk stepped forward, voice shaky but charged with awe. "He just came for gas," he said. Didn't say a word. But they wouldn't stop. They picked the wrong man. The officer frowned. "You're saying one guy did this?" The clerk nodded. "Not just any guy. Mike Tyson." The officer raised his eyebrows. Then slowly, a smile crept onto his face. "Well," he said, closing his notebook, "guess they messed with the wrong legend." Meanwhile, miles down the highway, Mike Tyson drove in silence. The rhythmic hum of the road soothed him. The adrenaline faded, replaced by a quiet clarity. His bruised knuckles throbbed gently, but his mind was still. He hadn't fought for pride or attention. He fought to remind them, and maybe even himself, who he still was. In the rearview mirror, the gas station lights faded into nothing. Mike didn't look back. He didn't need to. The road stretched out ahead, quiet, moonlit, and endless. He reached for his water, took another sip, and focused forward. The world would talk. The video would go viral. Headlines would scream Iron Mike takes down biker gang or Tyson versus Trouble, legend still unstoppable. He'd seen it before. He knew how it worked. But he wasn't concerned with clicks or fame. He wasn't a hero. He was just a man who stood his ground. And that was enough. In the distance, the glow of a small town appeared. Mike's stomach reminded him it had been hours since he'd eaten. He pulled off the highway and found a quiet diner. Inside, the air was warm, filled with the scent of coffee and fresh pie. A few locals sat chatting at the counter. The jukebox played a soft, old tune. As Mike entered, their heads turned. Recognition flickered in their eyes, but no one said a word. Just quiet nods of respect. He sat in the corner, away from the crowd. The waitress approached with a gentle smile. Coffee pot in hand. "Long night?" she asked. Mike gave a tired smile. "You could say that." She poured him a cup. He took a sip. Warm. Grounding. Peaceful. The fight was over. But the road was just beginning. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a moment. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded, some legends don't fade, they just get quiet, until someone pushes them too far.